I'd like to welcome everybody to our April meetup under these interesting circumstances. Our last meetup was in February, and it was a video game meetup. So I don't know how that would work today with all those people touching the machines, but I decided to set up a Zoom account, and I've been using it with family and friends, but I thought, well, might as well get in touch with everybody to see how things are going. Many of you probably haven't been really driving much, unless you're essential and you're working in town somewhere. But today we have a special guest, Tom. It's Tom Moloughney. That's how you pronounce it. I thought it was pronounced another way, but Tom is here. Tom lives in New Jersey, and he's. There is a bio up on the meetup site. I was going to read it to everyone. Let's see. Tom has been driving EVs since 2009. And has been advocating for the transition to electric transportation and clean energy. For the past decade, Tom powers his EVs with electricity from the solar array he has on his home in Chester, New Jersey, which has powered over 300,000 e-miles in the 6 different EVs that he's owned. Tom's an editor for the electric car website Inside EVs and has published over 1,000 articles on EVs and EV policy. I was kind of scanning through a few of these, and I'm like, boy, there's quite a few articles here. I was trying to get some idea of what you've done recently, and it's very interesting. His passion for electric cars led him to sell the restaurant he owned and managed for 30 years so he could dedicate himself to full-time EV advocacy, including training dealerships on how to better sell EVs. Tom's a former board member of Plug-in America and was asked to do a TED Talk on the future of electric mobility at the Frankfurt Motor Show in 2017. So I had a few questions for Tom to begin with. And Tom, how did you actually get started? What was your first experience with an electric car early on?
So, early on, this goes back to like the early 70s. One of my neighbors during the gas crisis, if you remember, I don't know how many of the people on today are old enough to remember when OPEC was formed and they rationed the gas, and we didn't have enough gas. The prices went through the roof. You had to go on odd and even days depending on your license plate. And I just remember it was crazy. And I remember sitting with my dad in the car and waiting like for 2 hours to get gas. And then one day we come home, I'm walking up the block, and a neighbor of mine is like, Tommy, back then it was okay for a neighbor to call you, invite you in his house, not like today, the guy'd get arrested. And he's like, I want to show you what I'm doing. And he showed me his car, lifted up the hood, and there was just a bunch of batteries. And I mean, I didn't know cars at the time. I knew there should have been like a motor in there, but I didn't know what it was. So he's like, you want to go for a ride? I made this an electric car. He like converted like an old Chevy Vega or something. So we took a ride around the block, and I just remember how quiet, like it was so weird because as we're driving, I lived in Jersey City. It's a city environment, with cars parked on the side of the street. I remember being able to hear people talk on the sidewalk as we drove down the street. And like, you can't do that with my mom's 73 Pinto, with like a hole in the muffler. And it was just like a surreal experience. So like, that was my first experience with electric cars. And I was like, those are really cool. And I remember him telling me, like, by the time you're my age, he goes, everyone's going to be driving these because they're better. Now, I'm way older than he was at the time that he did this. And we're not all driving electric cars, but some of us are. And I think that was the first little nugget of like putting electric cars in my brain. Now, fast forward to like the early 2000s. And I still was kind of like wondering what's going on with alternative fuel vehicles? Why are we still so dependent on oil and, foreign oil? And it's such an energy independence is so important for the country. It's like, I don't care if our sheetrock is made in China, like, or shirts or whatever, but like, our energy really should be domestic. We shouldn't be reliant on these foreign countries. So I started doing research, and what popped up at the time was like the Volt, because it wasn't available yet, but GM just announced they're going to make this electric car. And I was like, oh, that's fantastic. I'm getting one of these. Like, I want to drive the future. Like, I want to see what electric cars are like. But then I kept doing research, and one day I stumbled on an application from BMW, and it said, "Do you want to drive an electric car?" And I'm like, "Yeah, definitely." Filled out the application. It was for this experimental program that BMW was doing. It was a 2-year program, and they were going to convert a Mini Cooper and call it the Mini E, and they wanted 400 people, 450, I think, 200 on the West Coast, about 225 on the East Coast. It was split East and West Coast. You had to live in New Jersey or New York, I think, or California. And I applied for it, and I was accepted in the program. So I got the car in May of 2009, and I've been driving electric ever since consistently. And it was just like the awakening. You know, I remember driving home from the dealership with it, and the grin on my face was just like ear to ear. I bet a lot of people here in the group remember the first time they drove their first electric car home from the dealership. I bet you had that same experience. Just like I wanted to like roll down the windows and like yell at people like this is awesome. I'm driving an electric car. So that's really how it started for me.
Right. And you know, I noticed early on when I became familiar with you as an owner of the restaurant, you had installed a level 2 station. Maybe tell us a little bit about how that came about.
Okay, so when I was in the program with the Mini E, BMW supplied free chargers for your home, the free EVSE. And once everybody had their chargers, BMW realized they had ordered way more than they needed. So they sent out an email, and they were like, you know, does anybody want a second one or whatever? So I emailed, I said, yeah, I'll take one because I'll install it at my restaurant. Now I can charge at home and I could charge at work. And my work was like 30 to 40 miles, depending on what route I took from home. So that made a big difference. I could pull up at work, plug in, and in an hour or two, I was back to 100%. And so I took it and I installed it. And the funny thing is, I noticed that all of a sudden, other Mini E owners in my area that had it that I didn't know and I had never met before just started showing up at my restaurant and plugging in, and of course coming in and eating because they're stuck there for an hour or two. And it kind of blew me away because, I mean, everybody now says, well, that's obvious. We need public charging infrastructure. But go back to 2009 when there were no electric cars. In my mind, owning an electric car meant like you had a charger at home and you left your house and you went as far as you could, and you still had to make it home. I didn't envision public infrastructure. And I know, like I said, people will be looking at me like, how could you not have thought of that? Believe me, back then, it wasn't like you didn't think of that. And forget about DC fast charging. I never even heard of a DC fast charger because there were none. So in any event, I noticed people were coming to the restaurant, and it was fantastic. So when the Mini E program ended, ChargePoint reached out to me, and that was right around the time that the J1772 protocol was formed. Now, the Mini E had a proprietary plug on it because there was no standard for level 2 charging. So ChargePoint reached out to me because I had kind of been out there at that point, and people knew who I was. And they asked me if I wanted to one of their charging stations. And as soon as the Mini E program was ended, we switched out my Mini E charger for a proper level 2 ChargePoint station. It was actually the first level 2 charging station in the state of New Jersey, public level 2 charging station.
So I think we've all seen the pictures of you in your garage. Now, how many? Is there some kind of power switch, or how many of those can you use at the same time?
So I have 4 circuits that go to my garage. One's a 30 amp circuit, 2 or 40 amp circuits, and one's a 60 amp circuit. So I could have 4 level 2s going at pretty much full power if I wanted to, or if I derate the cars, I could have many more. I host every summer, I host an EV barbecue. And at my house, and the rules are pretty much simple. If you have an EV, you're invited, but you have to arrive in an EV. You can't pull up in a gas car. It could be a plug-in hybrid. So I get people coming from all over the place, and I mean, I usually have about 20 EVs here, and many of them need to charge. So you know, I'll charge people at full rate until there's more cars than what we can charge at full rate. Then we have to split the power. Maybe set your car to the lower rate, and I'll have 6 or 7 EVs charging on level 2 here at once.
I would imagine with having that many different types in your garage, you've been able to help troubleshoot some problems with maybe certain newer cars, or
Yep.
I don't.
Not so much anymore, luckily. The
Uh-huh.
cars now seem to be coming out ready to go. But early on, like 2013, 2014, 2015, almost every new EV that came out, there was at least one charging station that it didn't work on because of communication problems.
Hmm.
So, you know, BMW, the i3 didn't work on, oh God, I have a terrible memory. I think it was a Siemens
Yeah.
charger. I mean, pretty much every EV didn't work on one. And I would immediately, when I found that out, the Mercedes B-Class didn't work on like two or three of them. I would email the manufacturer, or I had contacts through media, and they would immediately go buy one and start testing it. It just blew my mind that the companies didn't have this testing, you know, in their facility before they released the car. Like, you know, now most of the companies do it. I've been at some of the garages for some of the U.S. headquarters of OEMs, and now they have a garage set up with like 50 chargers, and they test them all out. But going back to 2014, 15, 16, they were just pushing the cars out and saying, well, if you find one that it doesn't work on, let us know.
Hmm. Now, what's the last car show you've been to? Uh,
Well, I guess CES, if you want to call it a car
okay.
show, it's turning into a car show.
Hmm.
Before that would be the LA Auto Show in November. You know, the LA Auto Show was good. That's where the Mustang Mach-E was launched. I was invited to their launch party. Got to drive in the car. Didn't get to drive it. Nobody got to drive it,
Hmm.
except I think Jay Leno probably by now. But we got to ride in it for a couple of miles. And what else? I got to ride in the Audi e-tron Sportback, was just being shown for the first time there. Nice car. At CES, I got to drive the Byton M-Byte. That's a Chinese car company, Byton. They're
Yes.
making an all-electric SUV. It launches in a couple of months in China, and then it comes to the U.S. in 2021. It's an interesting vehicle. That's the one you might recognize, has that gigantic screen. It's a 41-inch touch screen that goes across the entire dashboard. I got to
Yep.
drive that. That was interesting.
I was going to ask you, how much of a distraction is that, or
Everybody
reflection?
says that. It really isn't. And I know it's hard to believe unless you drive it. In most of the pictures and videos that you've seen, the screen is turned up super bright, you know, so that it looks brighter for the videos. But when you drive it, it auto dims, and the content is static while you're driving it, except for like the nav, you know, where the car's driving. Things aren't spinning and there's no video playing while you're driving the car. Now, when you stop, you can bring up a crazy amount of content. But the while you're driving, it's all static. You know, it's the speedometer and state of charge, and the nav. You could make the nav huge, like it could be half the dashboard.
Hmm.
And I thought that was pretty cool. But I don't think the distraction is going to be as big of an issue as people think that it will be, quite honestly.
Now, the BYD vehicles, when can you get one in the United States now, or is
I
that
don't
coming?
think so, but I'd need to check on that. I know there are some, I think for fleets, I think you can get one, but I don't think, I could be wrong. I'd have to check on that. I don't want to mislead your
Right.
readers, but you know, Chinese cars are coming to the U.S. The
Hmm.
Chinese EVs, you know, BYD, Neo is going to be here at some point if they survive. They make really good cars, but they're you know, they still have some issues to get past. Xpeng has some really good EVs, which I've driven in China.
Hmm.
You know, the whole thing with Chinese and say build quality, they've gotten beyond that. Chinese cars now, the ones that I've driven, the ones from like companies that are really trying to put out a world-class quality car. Now, there are other companies that are still making the $10,000 little kind of things that look like if you kick it, it would fall apart. But
Hmm.
some of the other companies, particularly the new EV companies, they're putting out some quality cars, and I've driven them. And honestly, if they were here, you know, and you put it up next to a, you know, a Chevy or a Ford or, you know, Lexus or whatever, you wouldn't think that it was inferior quality at all.
Hmm. Now, do you get to attend any of the Tesla events? Have
Yeah,
you?
sometimes. Tesla's a funky company. I mean, I own a Tesla Model 3. So, I mean, I love the car. I think it's probably the best car for the value today. But Tesla's, they don't operate like any of the other companies. They're very difficult to speak with. They don't respond to emails. They don't send out typical press event invitations. They kind of pick and choose who they want at their different events. They don't,
Hmm.
you know, like if there's a new, say, Chevy Bolt coming out,
Right.
they invite every news outlet. And if you're an electric vehicle specialist that you cover EVs, you get an invitation. You could go out there and slam them. You could say, this car's a piece of junk, but for XYZ, whatever, you get invited to the next event. Tesla's a little different. If you're critical of the brand, you don't get an invitation. And I think that's unfortunate, but you know, I can't let that affect what I write. You know, I try to go down the middle. I openly admit that I think my Model 3 is the best car EV for the money right now available, but it's not perfect. It has problems, and when I counter problems, I write about them.
Yeah. I guess I'm going to ask you one more question and then open it up to everybody that's in here. We've got about 16 now.
Excellent.
So the one of the most recent reviews you did was for the the new Mini E, I guess. What are they calling it?
The Mini Cooper SE.
Mini Cooper SE. So, yeah, obviously there's some of these cars and the Mazda's entry, the range, but I guess every vehicle has its application, and so what? Maybe tell us a little bit about that vehicle and who do you think the market is for that?
Sure. So first off, I will say it definitely will do better in Europe than the U.S. It's just small cars just do better in Europe. The Europeans maybe are a little bit more willing to not have long range than we are here in the U.S. That said, there's definitely a market for it here. One of the things that the Mini product managers told me was that, you know, they do surveys of all their owners, and here in the U.S., the Mini Cooper is typically the third or the fourth car of the household. So if that holds true, you know, every car in your driveway doesn't need to go 400 miles per charge. You know, right. I've lived for 10 years now with EVs, and I've always had one of my cars was always like 100 or a sub 100 mile range, and it functioned fine for me. I use it for so many things. Maybe I don't take it when I go to my in-laws up in Vermont, but you know, my daily driving, it's more than what I need. So in that regard, it has a niche here. The EPA range rating is 110 miles per charge. I did 2 range tests when I had mine for 2 weeks. The one was 56 mile an hour, drive till it dies, and it went 132 miles on that charge. Temperatures were in the 50s to 60s. It wasn't really warm. I think I could have pushed it to closer to 150 if it was like 75, 80 degrees. And then I just did another one at a steady 70 miles an hour, and it went 108.2 miles. So even at 70 miles an hour, it almost hit the EPA range rating. One of the things that surprised me about the Mini was it performed really well on highway, higher speed driving, where I didn't think the Mini was going to do well because it's not very well aerodynamically designed. You know, it's kind of like a little brick driving, but it still did well at relatively high speeds. Around the town, I was getting close to 5 miles a kilowatt hour and not trying, just, you know, driving it normally. So, you know, I think the car, other than in the dead of winter, in temperatures 50, 60, 70 miles degrees, I think that it'll be easy to get 125 miles, 120, 130 miles on normal driving. So I think it'll do well for a lot of people. And the thing about the Mini is it's the price. The Mini wanted to make it affordable. It starts at $29,900 and it's pretty well loaded at $29,900. Now you could push it all the way up to almost $37,000, but at $29,900 you get a car that has a lot of options. And with the $7,500 federal tax credit, if your state has any rebates, like here in New Jersey, we have state rebates, it would qualify for $2,700 more. That car, brand new, I'm driving home for like $18,500 or something like that. It makes sense in that regard. Yes, it has limited range, but it's really fun to drive, and it's very affordable.
Yeah, I noticed one of our members, I don't think he's on today, his cousin has the plug-in Countryman. But I thought when he was posting photos, it was of the car you drove. When is the car that you drove going to be available?
It's available today.
Oh, it's available
Go out
today.
and buy one now.
Okay.
It launched first week in March. And the funny thing about it was, one of the things I posted, that there's a whole bunch of different wheel options you can get for the car. The top of the line wheels, the most expensive wheels, were called the Corona spoke wheels.
Right.
So when I got the car, I had the window sticker. And of course, when you get a media car, the companies give you the top spec with every option available. So of course, it had the most expensive wheels. And I took a picture of it and wrote a post and even tweeted about it. And then about 6 hours later, I get a call from Mini USA. And they're like, we saw the tweet. We've been talking about it all day. We think it's a good idea if we change the name of the wheels. And you can report now that they're not called Corona spoke wheels anymore. They're going to be called the Power spoke wheels. And so they had to recall all the cars and change the window stickers. It's not a small thing to change the name of like a wheel option or whatever. Every car has to they have to reprint the Moloughney label. They got to change, a bunch of stuff. So they're no longer called the Corona spoke wheels.
Wow. Okay, well, I'd like to open it up. I don't know how I'm going to manage this, but does anybody have a question for Tom?
I have one question.
Okay, go ahead, Bob.
Tom, I see on your profile on Inside EVs that you are currently assisting dealerships in boosting electric car sales. I'm kind of interested in that as well. I just wonder what you're doing.
Sure. So about 4 years ago, Plug in America reached out to me. That's not with Inside EVs. That's a Plug in America program. Recognizing that one of the big roadblocks to really accelerating electric vehicle sales was dealerships. And a lot of the dealers just didn't know what to do with the cars. They decided that they were going to build this program called Plug Star, where they would certify dealerships as like trained EV specialists. And then they also give them free referrals from the Plug in America website. So they hired a program director out in California, Eric Cahill, great guy. And they needed somebody on the East Coast to be their East Coast trainer and also to co-develop the program. So they reached out to me because they know I had been for the last few years working with some of the BMW dealers in my area to help them better sell the i3 with success. And so they knew that I was doing that. And they asked me if I would co-develop this program and then be like the East Coast dealership trainer. So that was about 3-4 years ago. And, now we've done programs in Massachusetts, New Jersey, Missouri, and California. We've trained, close to maybe 400 salespeople. And I can't even guess the number of dealers. And we have a program where I'll go to the dealership. I'll spend maybe 4 hours with as many of their sales staff as the dealership wants me to. And then we give them access to the PlugStar website, which is a resource. If somebody comes in and asks the client advisor a question that they can't answer, they can hop on our website and get that answer within a minute or two. Mm-hmm. So, if someone comes in and is talking about battery life or, what do we do with these batteries once the car's dead? These are questions that salespeople get. If they can't answer it, they could say, you know what, I don't know off the top of my head, but give me a second and I can find your answer. And they go on their computer and everything's there. So it's a really good tool. And what it does is it gives the salespeople confidence that they can sell these cars. There's a misconception that dealers hate electric cars, partly because, they're going to lose all their service dollars because EVs use a lot of less service dollars. And that's not true. And I know some of you might be surprised about that. And I'll tell you why. Because the person who's selling the car, the salesperson, he doesn't care if that car is going to make the dealership money down the road in the service department. He just wants a commission on a sale. So, they're not repressing the electric cars because they know that they're going to have to change their service model down the road. They know that. But in any given day, those salespeople, they just want to sell cars and make commissions. the big bottleneck was they didn't understand the cars. They couldn't answer people's questions. So when you came in and started answering a question about an electric car, what did they do? They pushed you towards the cars that they knew how to answer the question to. You know, you don't want this Leaf. Let me show you this Altima or whatever. And that was really the biggest impediment. So we realized if we demystify electric cars, if we explain them, we talk to them about charging, the different levels of charging. I bring them to a public charging station, show them how to activate a session and plug in a car. Now they've done it. So now if somebody comes in and says, well, what do I do if I'm on the road? They say, oh, no, you just use your app and you go, you swipe your card, you plug it in and you're fine. Until you make them do that, it's a mystery to them. So when somebody asks them, well, what do I do when I'm on the road? They're like, oh, well, you know, there's places where you can plug in. Well, how do I plug in? I don't know.
Yeah, because I've experienced, I mean, I've been to local dealers and, you know, we've had some fast chargers come on board at the mall and you tell them, hey, you know, there's a fast charger at the mall. You might, when you do test drives, you might want to work that into your routine and show them how that works. And, you know, you try to help, but
yeah,
I'm wondering if like the companies getting into that program, are they the ones that they're like the bottom, like they have no experience whatsoever, or are the ones going into the program the ones that are really like, you know, typically with Chevrolet, they have they have all the equipment and they're really trying to sell a lot of bolts, electric cars, for example, or is it a mix, you know?
It's definitely a mix. You know, I remember one dealership out in Massachusetts that I went to, he had, when I showed up, they had like 20 bolts on the lot. And I was like, wow, this is fantastic. You know, typically we don't see that. And when I was talking to the owner, he's like, look, he goes, we're not even trying to make profit on the bolts. We're happy if we sell at a break even, because when we get the more bolts we sell, the more trucks Chevy gives us. It's like a trade-off. So, I mean, that's one extreme.
Great.
And then we get other extremes, because I'll deal with either the general manager, the general sales manager, or the dealership owner. And then on the other hand, I'll get dealership owners that are like, look, I know this is the future, but I don't know anything about it. So that's why we brought you in. We're at ground zero. Please explain this to us and help us sell cars. And then I'll get something in the middle where, you know, I'll have, you know, a dealer, an owner tell me like, yeah, you know, I think this is a big waste of my time, but the manufacturer keeps shipping these cars to us and we don't know how to sell them. So if you could help me get these things off the lot, then I'm fine with that. So I don't really care why they bring us in there. I just like to get in there, because once I talk to the sales staff, almost always I see them like changing their mind, like, wow, okay, I get it. Yeah, I could sell this car. If I talk about the rebates, I talk about the long-term savings, the refueling, like, yeah, now I get why this car. Before you came, I didn't understand why anybody would want to buy this car.
Mm-hmm. And we've actually been in contact with Eric Cahill. Scott and I have they have this new online training course.
Yep.
So we took that and gave some feedback, and now Eric has moved on to a different place.
Yep.
So I just talked yesterday to Catherine Urquhart. Whatever.
Yep. She's the new program director, and I'll be doing the new online training.
Oh, nice. Scott has just sent a package of comments about how the training could be improved. We haven't sent it off yet, but
send it directly to me too. I mean, send it to them, but send it to me also. Sorry to interrupt you, Bob.
Sure. We're trying to, you know, just kind of on the grassroots, try to get people interested in it, because it does look like it's a really good program.
Mm-hmm. It's worked. We have success, and we have data that shows the dealerships that we've worked with are selling more electric cars than before we worked with them.
So the next step is maybe trying to go to utilities to see if they have any money.
That was the first step, not the next step. How do you think we got it off the ground?
No, I mean for us here in Washington.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, that's
at the same time, maybe trying to find. Oh, sorry.
No, the first place we go when we need seed funding in a new market are the utilities.
So yeah, very exciting stuff.
Yeah. Tom, there's a question in the chat. I think it's directed to everybody, but I'm going to ask you. Do you have any comment on the charger networks wanting to have a relationship rather than no account credit card access like gas stations?
Well, of course, the networks want data. You know,
Okay.
that's part of it. And, you know, I don't know if we're going to be able to get around that, to be honest with you. And that's part of the reason why we don't see, like, you know, one card to rule them all with every network. Because, you know, there's been some efforts to launch that, but there's always fighting between the networks. Like ChargePoint doesn't want to give Blink their customer data, and Blink doesn't want to give Electrify America their customer data. So there's always that war with that. You know, I don't know, the way the world is going with data's more, it's like the data is more important to them than the actual money they charge for your charging event. I mean, they sell that data to the manufacturers, you know, whether or not it shows your name and your car or whatever is one thing. You know, I mean, for some events, the manufacturer wouldn't care about your name. They just want charging data as far as how long the car charges, what it holds at, the battery temperature, and all that stuff. They use that, you know, to help improve their cars. But, you know, I don't know that the whole data rabbit hole, I don't think we're going to step back from that. I think it's only going to get more prevalent, unfortunately.
I have another question, but I want to open it up again to anybody that might have a question for Tom.
Yeah, Mark, this is Paul Verchinsky.
Yes.
I was curious as to what's going on in New Jersey with putting EVSEs into apartments and homeowners association. That seems to be the real big nut in terms of getting people interested that don't live in single family dwellings. What's been your experience, and have you been able to get over that hump?
So, no, we haven't gotten over it. I've been advocating a long time for, you know, charger ready legislation and also right to charge legislation here in the state. You know, there's a couple of municipalities that have picked up on it and are considering doing it, but nothing statewide yet. I know the Charge EVC, their electric vehicle advocacy organization here in New Jersey. I know that's one of the things that they're trying to push is right to charge legislation for multi-family dwellings, but we don't have really any traction on that yet. I know there's a couple municipalities, and I should have followed up on it, but I just forgot that actually we're putting it up for vote last year. But that would just be municipality wide, that if right to charge legislation, if somebody lived in a multifamily dwelling and they wanted to install a charger at their own expense and meter it at their own expense, then the condo association or the apartment owner couldn't deny them to do that. But I honestly don't know where it went, if it was passed. We need something statewide, and you know, there isn't really a lot of traction for that just yet.
Yeah, I guess.
Follow-up question on that.
Okay, go ahead.
We've tried the right to charge legislation in Maryland for, I think this is the third year running. It still hasn't gotten through. We have been successful in getting local ordinances like in Howard County that now require chargers for all new residential motels, hotels, and that seems to be going well, but that's on an individual county by county basis. The overall right to charge for existing is really tough, and I've been trying to get examples of that. I've gotten one, I may have another one. If you're aware of any homeowners associations that have done it in New Jersey, I'd be interested in getting those examples from you.
Yeah, I off the top of my head, I'm not aware of any that have done that. I could look into it. I could talk to the Charge. What you should actually reach out to the Charge. Do you know the organization, the Charge EVC?
No, I don't.
So yeah, it's the New Jersey CHARGEVC. I think the VC stands for venture capital. I'm not sure, but they're a great resource, and you can go to their website. You can email them and ask them and say, look, can you provide us with any information? They would have the information on that, I believe, because they're a full-time organization with staff that are working on all, electric vehicle adoption and proliferation programs in the state. They'd be a good resource for that, if there are any.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, that's chargevc.org. Chargevc.org. Okay, I had a question about, so you also recently test drove the Taycan. Tell us about that. Who the market for that car would be, and how does that compare to like driving a Model S or a Model 3 Sport?
So the market is wealthy people.
Okay.
Okay. I'm one of the lucky people that has driven the Taycan quite a bit. I drove it from Copenhagen, Denmark to Hamburg, Germany, which was about 500 miles. And then I drove it from Atlanta, Georgia, down to Daytona, Florida, to the Daytona racetrack. So that both of those drives, I drove it a combined over 1,000 miles. One was the Taycan Turbo S, and the other one was the Turbo. And I had the Turbo S in Europe. So I got to really get that out on the Autobahn for a while. And I'm happy to say I was able to beat Porsche's listed top speed of 162 miles an hour. I was able to get a sustained 167 miles an hour for quite some time, which was a lot of fun. But it's an incredible car. To be honest with you, and I love what Tesla's doing. If price was no object, I would have a Taycan over any of the Tesla products. It's an absolute blast to drive. It's an extremely comfortable car. You could track it one day and then the next day drive it nice and calmly with the family. It's a fantastic EV. I don't know, the very little downside to it. I know people complain about, it's not as quite as efficient as a Tesla, and they're right about that. But you know what? I know I could easily get 250 miles driving a Taycan, and that's not even trying. I know the EPA range rating is around 200 miles, but I've driven it enough to know that if I like hyper mild with it on the highway, I could get 260, 270 miles per charge. If I just drove it normally, I could easily do 250. So the range isn't a problem. And it charges at such a high rate of speed. If you get the Electrify America charging stations, charges at 270 kilowatts. It's just a fantastic car. When you get in it, I was concerned that it wasn't going to feel like a Porsche, like it was going to, it was Porsche's first real all-electric car. And I thought maybe the steering might be numb, or it just might not feel like I was in like a 911 Turbo. But no, Porsche really did a fantastic job engineering that car. It's a true sports car. Whereas, the Teslas, the Model S and the Model 3, even the Performance, are brutally fast sedans. They're not sports cars per se. Different vehicle. I'm not saying one's better than the other. I still think the Teslas are the best value for your dollar today with an electric car, the Model 3 in particular. But if I didn't have to pay for it, if someone was going to say, we're going to give you a car, what do you want? I'd probably take a Taycan Turbo S.
Coming back down to earth, the Mustang Mach-E, I guess if you got to ride in it, that's exciting. I went to the DC car show. That's probably one of the last events I went to, and they wouldn't even let us sit in it. But what's your impressions of the Mach-E?
So they probably didn't let you sit in it because the car they had on display was like probably one of only 2 or 3 Mach-E's that were like fully done, like the interior and everything, the cars they drove us in, often when I get to drive in pre-production cars, the seats aren't the production seats. The door panels are like a thin plastic. It's all just pre-production testing. So, you know, that's why we're allowed to sit in them and you weren't allowed to sit in yours, because yours was, they probably had like 2 or 3 of them at the time that were actually like handmade production cars. No, I mean, it was a great experience. The one thing that I take away from it was what I kind of give Ford a lot of credit for. When you're sitting in it, it felt very Tesla-like. I think Ford didn't just try to take one of their regular cars and make it a Ford electric car. They said, this is a different type of vehicle. It's different than we've ever made before. So we're going to make it completely different and feel different. And who's making the best electric cars out there today? Tesla. So why don't we emulate what they're doing? And it had that feel inside the car. It was kind of like a hybrid Ford Tesla. And I give Ford credit for that. I don't knock them for, say, quote unquote, copying or whatever. I think that's a good thing. Tesla obviously is doing something right. People love their cars, like the user experience, like that giant center display without a lot of knobs and whatnot. And I think Ford did a good job in making it a Ford, but also bringing some of the good qualities that Tesla's doing into the vehicle. I can't wait to drive one. I can't really comment much on the driving experience because it was a pre-production model and I wasn't driving it. You know, we had the Ford engineer was driving it. But hopefully, you know, by the fall is when we're predicting, around September-ish, we should be able to get some media drives.
Yeah, I own a Fusion. I still own a Fusion Energy, and I was really excited about it. I'm going to wait. I'm concerned about the software aspects, and they need to get that right. You know, they can have a great piece of hardware, but you know, I have the Ford and I have a Sync, and hopefully it's a new team, a new platform they're working on for the Mach-E. But it's exciting. It's nice to see, you know, other companies moving forward with projects like that.
Yeah.
I was a little upset to hear about the Rivian Lincoln recently. I guess they're breaking that off. Do you have any comments on that? What are comments about the Rivian?
Yeah, so I mean, I love what Rivian is doing. I'm not surprised that Ford and Lincoln just canceled that program. And I don't think it's any indication that Ford is pulling back from EVs. What I think it's purely developed out of the COVID-19 crisis, where the companies need to tighten the belt right now. You know, they're losing, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars. They're hemorrhaging cash. They're not selling cars. So coming out of this crisis, what I think you're going to see is the manufacturers are going to focus on the vehicles that make the most money for them. And on the domestic brands, Chevy and Ford, what is it? It's their big gas guzzling pickup trucks and SUVs. They make by far the most monies for these brands. So what I think you're going to see in the immediate 6 to 8 months to a year is they're going to be trying to build out as many of those cars as they can, focus on putting all their money and their resources into those vehicles. Gas is going to be cheap for a while, so people are going to be buying those cars. You know, I mean, it's unfortunate, but we see that kind of knee-jerk reaction. As soon as gas drops, people run out and buy SUVs. So coming out of this crisis, I think they're going to be pushing those SUVs. They pulled back on the Rivian deal because they said, you know what? Now that we have a year per se where we're not in a rush to get out another electric car besides the Mach-E, we can take our time and develop our own platform for our trucks, which they were doing anyway, Ford. But I think the deal with Rivian was to bring an electric truck to market sooner. They didn't want to be late. But now that they say they're pushing everything back for a year or so, my guess, there's no need to rush and get something out. The F-150, when it comes out, will be a fully, you know, in-house developed platform.
Okay. Any other questions for Tom today? No?
Just a second.
Oh,
Jeffrey here. I was just curious from before. I never got how many amps you got to your garage?
I have the 40 amp circuit, no, two 40 amp circuits, a 30 amp circuit, and a 60 amp circuit. So it's at 170 amps.
So I was gonna kind of fake Tom. You're welcome to just really appreciate it coming on with us.
No, it's great.
The next part of this was gonna just be like a little show and tell. Do you have anything you want to show and tell from? I don't know, even if it's something you can grab quickly that from your history of.
Let me see what I have on my shelf behind me. I wasn't ready for this. We didn't plan this,
okay.
Everyone. So let me see. Okay, I have a couple things behind me actually.
Okay.
So this is made by Clipper Creek, and it tests chargers. So when you plug it in, when you install a new level 2 charger, and you energize it, if you don't have an electric car, you plug it into here, and the lights will light up to tell you if the circuit's correct, if there's any faults. It's not really smart. It won't pull any energy or anything, but it just tells you if there's any ground fault in it. It's an interesting device. That's one. This thing here was a really interesting thing. You guys might be familiar with eMotorworks. They made the juice box. They've been subsequently bought by NLX. So now there's no eMotorworks. It's NLX sells the juice box. This was called the juice plug that they were gonna make. They actually ended up making a few of them, but then they canceled it. What it did was, the juice box was a smart charger. It Wi-Fi connected, allowed you to perform a bunch of functions. If you use this, you could have a dumb charger, let's say, and you plug the connector into here, and then into this side, and then you plug this into your car. So it would make any charging station you had a smart charger, and you'd use the juice box network with this. Unfortunately, they abandoned it. I'm not sure exactly why. It does work. It's pretty interesting, but I'm not sure many people know that something like this even existed. So any charger, you could make a smart charging station and record your all your usage in your app. I mean, you could even take this if you went to a public charging station and plug it in. So that way your app is recording all of the energy that you've used for your car, whether it's at home or on the road. Because some people,
Dan's career is
like to see that.
Career.
Hey, Tom, if I could just jump in here, Jeffrey. I do have one of those. It's a really neat product, but one of the other problems is network settings. In fact, if it didn't get electricity from the plug, and it does have a battery to remember the network settings, but if it does not get enough power from the plug, it will lose its network settings, and then setting it up again through their service through the phone is a little bit tricky. And I think that's one of the problems they were just unable to resolve.
Okay, that's good to know. I really only used it to test it and review it. I didn't use it on an ongoing basis. It's been sitting up in my office here. So that you gave me information on it that I didn't know. You're one of the few people that have had it, Jeffrey, because they obviously they didn't really sell many of these.
I think I actually might have one somewhere in a box, and I think I gave one away at one of the events one time, or one of the Drive Electric events. Hopefully we have a Drive Electric event this year.
Yeah,
but I have. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that ends the show and tell session of the presentation
of yours. I'll do my show and tell. Recently, I don't know, I was just searching around on eBay, and back in like 1969, Sunoco stations did a thing where they had this collectible coins, and some of them were more valuable than others because they were like almost like a quick pick lottery ticket, where if you like an instant win. And I don't have that one, but I've got I did buy some on eBay. This is a Detroit Electric coin, and again, these are aluminum. They're from like 1969.
Cool.
And the other one I've got, Detroit Electric, Standard Electric is the other one I have. I don't know these. I didn't pay a lot for these, but I just thought I've got like 7 of them. I can give them out as prizes or something if we ever get together again. But they used to, I think they had you'd have like an entire sheet you could fill out and pop the coins into, and there's like 25 coins on a sheet, and they weren't just electric cars. They were all different types of cars. But I thought it was interesting that a gas station had a coin for an electric car that they, as part of a game they were doing. So
that's cool. Really cool. I forgot there's two more things really quickly.
Okay.
Right over here, over my right shoulder, you could see it's a clock. That's made from the speedometer out of my Mini E. The Mini E I drove for 2.5 years. When it was taken back and BMW decommissioned them, they took the speedometer out of it and turned it into a clock for me and gave it back to me. So that's all parts in that was actually from the car that I drove for 2 years. And then over this shoulder here, you can see that it's like a Mustang. That was like part of the gift that you got for being invited to the launch of the Mustang. It's just like a little Mustang caricature. So yeah, that's two more things. I just realized that looking at my picture, you could see those behind me.
Yeah, we went to a few years ago. They had a movie preview, and they gave out a little Volt. I think when the second generation Volt came out, they did a movie preview, because I think the Volt was in the was it Tomorrowland? It was a movie where I think they feature the Volt in the movie at some point, and so they were giving out these little they weren't Matchbox, they were made by another company, but you see stuff like this all the time. That probably look on eBay and find that stuff for sale. So. I don't know if anybody else saw the show and tell aspect of this, but does anybody else have anything they want to show us?
Yeah, I actually do.
Okay, you can hold it up to the camera.
Yeah, this is Kevin. So this is from, I'll hold it up in a second, but this is from way back when Tesla Model S was kind of still not seen on the road very much. And I was using a car detailer that set up a charity car show event, and everybody was there. They had, a huge range of cars from, people that had thrown together their own car from like mods to things that were essentially show ready, 100% restorations of classic cars. And then I show up in a Model S, and they ended up giving out awards, and I wasn't really expecting anything because the group of people that was there with all their other cars didn't really know what was going on with mine, but I ended up actually winning most unique for all the cars. And I think this was back in 2015. And I thought that was pretty cool. I ended up getting a bunch of like car wash stuff with the award, but I have it sits next to my charger in my garage, and I'm like, it's the one time I won something ever.
Cool.
That's great. Yeah. I have, does anybody else have one? Because I'm going to go get another one that I have up on my mantle, but does anybody else have something?
I've got something.
Go ahead, Scott.
I've got something.
Yeah, well, we're not seeing any video of you. You're just going to talk about it, or?
Oh, are you seeing my iPad? I'm under iPad. I'm listed under
maybe,
iPad.
okay, I'm looking at...
I've got two streams, actually, two Zooms. I'm by Zooming.
Well, I'm only seeing when you talk, I only see the one with your name.
Yeah, look at iPad. It just says iPad.
Oh, okay.
That's me.
Okay.
I can see him.
You see me now?
Okay. I see you now.
Okay. Can you see me now? Yeah, I mean, I like antique electric stuff, and so and Google Books is a great resource because it has all of these journals like Motor Age and Motor Wagon and Central Station that were from the turn of the century, and there was a book that was put out by the New York Electric Vehicle Auto Association called Electric Touring, and this is a guidebook. This is from 1914, and it has tours that you could take in your electric car centered on New York, and it has seven of these tours. And actually, I could share my screen. Can I? Let me see if I can do that. Share. Let me see. I have to lift up here. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is the map that comes with the book, and so it has these tours, and several of them are in New Jersey, and it's kind of cool because it gives the address and the miles, and turn left at the railroad bridge and go right underneath the trolley bridge and stuff like that. But it's kind of fun to follow along, and so I just thought it was interesting. And then they have, they told you where the chargers were, and the chargers were usually at the central station in town, the power station. There were some electric garages that had chargers. So they told you where to charge and where to go. And then, so you could take a tour out of New York and take it around into New Jersey and out on Long Island and up into Connecticut. So I thought it was interesting.
Great.
Cool.
Anybody else?
I've got just a couple of quick things.
Great.
And by the way, I'm Robert Frenette. I'm in West Virginia, Martinsburg, West Virginia. I'm the president of the West Virginia Electric Audio Association. But glad you guys were having a virtual meeting and was able to hop on.
Great.
Just my first electric vehicle was a Nissan Leaf, so I got my Nissan Leaf water bottle from National Drive Electric Week, which everybody I'm sure has one of these laying around somewhere. But anyway, it's just a reminder of my first electric vehicle that I really enjoyed. Sold it not too long ago, and I have a Tesla Model 3 now. And then my small solar panel to represent my, I also have a solar home, so I power my house and electric vehicles off solar. So that's also very important to me, and I agree totally with Tom's point about foreign oil and energy independence, how important that is. And then my last comment, and also kind of following along with Tom, and I sent this out when I got the Tesla, it's like, you're not buying a car, you're buying a time machine that allows you to experience the future today. So that was my comments on the Tesla.
Oh,
Very good.
good.
I agree wholeheartedly.
I got this.
Okay.
You can see it. Oh, I probably
Mixing up your background.
I gotta turn my background down. I got this.
Oh.
Oh, can you see that?
Uh-huh.
Nice there, Bob.
That's the only thing the family could think to give to me for my birthday.
Hey, I'll do a show and tell next.
Okay.
Jeffrey here, my little Tesla. Now, here's the thing about this. I got two of these. This is I think, the one I pulled up. So, like, they forgot to deliver. They were supposed to give these away when you bought a Tesla. And so I had to drive all the way up to Owings Mills because they said, oh, well, if they failed to give you, we'll give you one. So they gave me this one. And then I went to, for service. And my dealership, the one in Tyson's Corner, Virginia, said, oh, we realized we forgot to give you one of these. Here you go. And it's like, well, but she ran away too quickly. So I actually have two of these. This one's in the case. The one that's not in the case is sitting over there. I couldn't reach it. But it's outside with, if anyone knows Doctor Who, Bessie, the doctor's car, it's sitting right next to that. I always imagine that Bessie was one of the first EVs because that thing was fast.
Got her hand smashed in the door. She immediately.
Great. Thanks, Jeff.
Oh my God, this
Jeffrey.
weekend.
Anybody?
One more thing I'll mention about show and tell. Robert showed that he had the water bottle from the Nissan Leaf.
Mm-hmm.
You might be able to see up here. Let me see if I can move my hand. Right up here, there's like 20 water bottles. So when I do the media drives, usually the manufacturers have a water bottle in the car for you because sometimes they're long media drives. So I have them up there from like Mercedes, BMW, the Taycan, the Mach-E, I have like 20 water bottles. But the good thing is they're starting now to not give water bottles because, it just like got crazy. But now we'll typically get like a small battery charger for your cell phone, which is much more useful than the water bottles.
Yeah. Anybody else have anything they want to share?
Yeah, I just ran out, Kevin again.
Okay.
I just ran out to the garage. This is kind of a silly thing, but people that have a Model S with the retracting door handles know that that's something that's going to fail eventually. And right after mine went out of the extended service agreement, the driver's side door handle did fail. And I ended up getting a third-party repair kit, but I kept the little sprocket that broke. You can see that's supposed to be a full circle there, and that's what it was. It's just a little motor that turns it and pushes out the door handle. And I ended up repairing it myself, and it was actually not a bad fix. Getting everything apart was real quick. Getting everything back together, less quick. But it wasn't too bad. The hardest part was a bolt that was, you had to get it back on next to the window glass inside the door frame without dropping the nut part down into the door. But other than that, not too bad.
I'll share something. I'm gonna try to share my screen right now, and kind of let me know if you can see this. Can everybody see this?
Yes.
Is it off center? There we go. So my name is Purcell, and I've been a Tesla owner since 2015. And I bought my car in September of that month. In October, I was putting mods on it right away. So I have about 26 mods on my car. But this is what I'm about to show you has been probably the most talked about item that's in my car. And this item here actually got me a bunch of stuff. It got me hats from Tesla, mugs from Tesla, a leather bag from Tesla. It got me 2 wall chargers with the faux Elon Musk signatures. It got me aftermarket wheels, and then it got me a power wall. So this is what you're looking at is a hood liner that Tesla stopped making in 2015. But I ended up buying another one, and I shipped it off to Canada when I met, I used to compete my car in car shows, and Mark and Jeffrey and some other people know how tricked out my car is. So I shipped this up to Canada after I saw a Ford Mustang had something similar in his hood liner. So when I went to call a guy, it was a couple of months before I actually got him on the phone. I sent him a bunch of drawings and Google images. And then we decided to come up with something like this. And everybody knows my hood liner from my car. So we went in different phases of getting this all installed. And he was sending me photos as it was coming along. And that's what it looks like now. Actually, that was the last thing that he sent. And if you notice, there are a few, I don't know if you can see my mouse. Can you see my mouse? I'm pointing to these holes.
Yeah.
Tesla has different type of pins that holds up this hood liner. So it's a fatter one down here. It's a couple of fatter ones down here. And then you have 16 all in the mural. So when he sent me back the mural, I had to actually go and put the first mural, the first pin here, then I went 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, then I went da 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 da, and it was kind of like putting a puzzle together, but it actually worked out. So this is a small video of him showing the final product. I'll turn this music down before he sent it to me, and then once he did, I put it in my car. And whenever I go to any car shows or just hanging out with EV owners like Mark and Jeffrey, sometimes like during this time right now, last year, I'm on the road every single weekend participating in car shows or car events. And 9 times out of 10, people walk up obviously and talk to me about the mural, but they'll see this unusual car that Tesla stopped making that paint in 2015, and then they'll go up to Tyson's Corner, and the service people last. Did anybody tell you about Tesla? And they say, yeah, it was some African-American guy with this different color car, unusual name, plus he has the Tesla hood liner in it. And that preceded a cavalcade of just a cascading of gifts that I received from Tesla. So that's my show and tell.
I noticed that the Model Y has something similar in the front area. I don't know how easy it would be to take it off, but unlike the Model 3, which doesn't have it.
Well, it was a problem for me to describe. So my phone number, I'm retired military, so my cell phone number starts with 253, and that's a phone number that I was stationed in Seattle, near Seattle, Washington. So when I tried to order a hood liner, because I didn't want my hood liner to be screwed up, I called the they saw my 253 number and it linked me to Seattle, Washington Service Center. And that's how I actually got my hood liner, because they kept asking me, did I want a headliner? And I said, no, I wanted a hood liner. So they ended up sending me the hood liner from Seattle to Baltimore, Baltimore to Waldorf. Then I had to send it to Canada, and I had to pay tariffs on it twice, going into Canada and coming out of Canada. So I put a lot of money into this hood liner. But I don't think they make these hood liners anymore. I know for the least few years I've seen them, but I've seen the Model Y, but I did not notice when the front was open that they have a hood liner.
Yeah. That's very interesting. Let me show you. I've got one more thing. So I think it's like, this was like September or October of 2018. Every year we would participate in and some of you have been there. It's the GM plant in White Marsh, Maryland, just north of Baltimore, would do a car show in association with, they'd partner with, I think, the United Auto Workers and a local fire department or something, where they would collect fees for the show and then donate it to that organization. But this was actually the plant that made the Spark EV electric motor, and they also, beyond that, were making components for the Cadillac, not the ELR, but the larger vehicle, which I'm not even sure they make anymore. The electric plug-in electric Cadillac CT. What is it? CTS, or one of those models. There was a plug-in electric. Pardon?
Is that CLR?
No, it was the big sedan that
Yeah, it
they
was like
had.
the CT6 or CTS.
Yeah.
I forget the exact moniker.
Well, anyways, that was the first year I got my Model 3 in August, and so it was, a brand new car, and Kurt Harpold, who has the Tesla Roadster, couldn't make it that year. So I'm like, oh, I got a shot, because anytime the Roadster is in a car show, it typically wins. And it's because he's got several trophies. But so here's the trophy that I won. They actually created an electric car category for us. And these trophies were always like over the top, because they would take parts from transmissions and motors and things and make them. So this one, here's what I keep this on my mantle, but it's a bunch of gears. You see, it says most electrifying, but it actually it turns. I don't know how much time and money they spent putting these together, but really neat award I got from that show. And I think they've shuttered that plant, so there's no more car shows unless they're doing it somewhere else. But it's a shame, because I just got caught up, I guess, and this was before they just one of the plants that they were going to shut down. Anybody have anything else? Any other?
I've got something.
Okay, good.
On the general theme, in June 2018, we started off with a 2012 Leaf, and then got a 2014 Leaf, and then a 2016 Kia Soul EV, and those were all leases. So back when I had the Soul, I drove from DC up to Burlington to the Shelburne Auto. There's like a Shelburne antique museum up there, and they were having a car show with a lot of electric antique cars. And so then I drove up there and made it in a road trip, and the Soul had like a 95-mile range, so it wasn't really made for road trips, but I did it anyway. So then I got this award, farthest driven vehicle. And they took a photo, gave me a nice little
nice
kind of plaque. And they had some really awesome cars there. There was like 2 Detroit Electrics and a 1909 Waverly, and all kinds of cool stuff. But so that was
fun. When we used to go to the Mushroom Festival, I don't know if you've ever heard of that, Tom, but that's up in Kennett Square, Pennsylvania. Actually, they canceled this year's. It's usually in September. They do a classic car show, and a few years we asked them if we could enter electric cars into that show. That's a great event. they basically shut down one or 2 miles of the main street in Kenneth Square, Pennsylvania, and just have all these food stands and crafts and anything made with mushrooms they have there. And it's if you like mushrooms, that's the place to go. But like I said, it's a huge event. A lot of planning goes on, and they decided to cancel it for this year. There's too much uncertainty. Anybody else have anything they want to add?
I may have one
Oh.
quick one.
Okay.
I have, I don't know if most of you know, but I have a very sophomoric weekly show called Don't Waste Your Time. This video may not be for you. And Mark started talking about the pinball event, and I did not get a chance to edit this video yet, but I'm going to turn this video down, but this was our pinball event at Mom's, and Mark, you can probably talk over this. She was the manager, am I correct?
Yes. And basically, this is an organic grocery store in College Park, Maryland, Tom, that has a pinball room. And the CEO of Mom's Organic Markets, what's his name? Scott. Does anybody know his last name?
I can't remember.
Yeah, it's his personal pinball collection. It's probably like 30 machines in there, and they're not free. You pay a quarter but it was a great place to do an event in a cold weather month. And it's just very interesting that a grocery store would have a pinball arcade in it, and off to the side. And then they have organic food you could also get there as well. They had a little like carry out, and they have some places to sit down. So that's really I love to do that at least once a year. Just something different to do when we can't all be outside standing around our cars.
This is
So the tournament is underway, and they have.
I'm sorry, that's me talking. So this is the actual. Whoops, sorry about that. I'm going too fast. Here we go. So this was the actual. Can everybody see that? I was clicking kind of fast. So this was the pinball machines that Mark was talking about, and they have the tournament. And Mark, you can describe how the tournament went. The little white tag there is one of the pinball machines that was in play for high score, correct?
Well, I marked all the machines. We didn't use every machine in the tournament, so we marked 5 or 6 machines, and then everybody had a card, a scorecard, and then I had software on a laptop which managed all that, and that worked out pretty well. But they have tournaments there all the time. Maybe not now, but and I was thinking about doing something like that. There's a pinball arcade up in Frederick. I always wanted to do an event up in either Frederick or Hagerstown because I haven't been up to that part of the state. But just need to find a location and something interesting to do. There's actually, I think in Frederick, there's actually a restaurant called the Volt Cafe. It has nothing to do with cars, but I just thought, well, that's kind of interesting. Maybe so.
I got one other real quick thing.
Okay.
I'm gonna share my screen real quick. A little quick story. My license plate is sun powered for my Model 3, and the reason I chose that one for my car was the first Tesla I ever saw in West Virginia. I've got a picture over here. Was coal powered. So I took great offense to that, and had to use a different plate for mine. But anyway, I do like having the solar powered, theme going with the car. That was it.
Cool.
Yep. So of the Model 3 or Tesla owners here, has anybody had a hardware upgrade? Probably more on the Model 3 side. Has anybody had that done?
I've got it. I've got 3.0.
Okay.
Mine came with the 3.0, so I didn't need to get the upgrade.
I mean, that's the beauty of those Post-it notes is that, if you think I need to move this, sooner, and then you can kind of look and see. Oh,
I actually have the software that stops at stoplights and stop signs now.
oh, wait a minute.
Mhm.
I can't say that.
Haven't been able to test it, but I have it.
Right.
Until your smuggler gets up here.
But my last update was
Oh,
was
then you got a whole different story. Yeah. Oh.
I'm sorry,
I
that's not me. Is that
No, that was, sorry, Jeffrey.
I stopped
Mark, I've
because I
got
thought
a-
somebody was talking.
Mark, I've got a question when we're over.
Okay.
On the matter of EV fees, I'll just throw it out there. So Maryland doesn't have an EV fee, and before our legislative session was prematurely ended, there was a bill that probably was not going to pass, but was put into the mix, into the hopper, and it was going to increase registration fees on EVs. And the thinking was that yeah, it's so that EVs can pay their share of road tax, and that's fine. I don't have any problem with that. But the question is, what's fair? And so it died, but it's probably going to come back at some point. And my personal opinion is that we need to switch to a vehicle mile tax, and that's kind of the way that you could fairly determine, you know. That's kind of what we have now as a proxy for a vehicle mile tax, but it's based on gallons of gas.
Mhm.
So what's so does New Jersey have a fee, and what's your thinking about that? And
So currently there are no fees, and I believe exactly what you said. I think that the most fair way to do it is just pay by mile. Maybe have a couple different categories where some of the bigger, heavier vehicles would pay more because you know they do wear out the roads more. So I think there could be a couple classifications, but ultimately paying by mile is the most efficient and most fair way to do it. But you also get involved with a lot of groups then talking about, you know, concerned with, you know, sharing more of my personal information. Now you know how much I drive every year and I'm not reporting it or whatever. So, you know, I think there's going to be some headwind in getting that established. But ideally, I think it would be the best way of doing it and the most fair way. You drive more, you pay more. But I think there's going to be some, you know, difficulty getting that through. I mean, ultimately, when the cars can self-report it once a year, let's say, you know, the car will, you know, just automatically do it for you. I think that's going to be the best way to treat it. But again, there's going to be a lot of privacy, you know, concerns, and I think people are going to. I think there's going to be a lot of people that are not happy with that, is what I'm saying. But I would advocate for it. I would agree to do that myself.
yeah, I mean, I think that there's a way to do it. Well, I mean, when you take the car to the dealer, okay, the dealer knows the miles, so you're giving, you know, that information away anyway. But yeah, you
but
could
have to do it once a year at a set time, you know.
Yeah. Well,
you know,
see, what my thinking is, in Maryland, we have an emissions inspection that you have to go to. So, and the hybrids pull up there and they just put in the dongle, and then they basically just wave you through, and you don't really have to have anything measured.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had an 04 Civic hybrid, and they basically just, you know, you signed you off. But you could just take an odometer reading then, and then. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do it. You could pay into kind of basically an escrow account and pay ahead, and then you get a refund after a year or something. But because see, eventually it's going to have to do that anyway, because as we get more and more EVs, something's got to give, and you may as well put that all in place now.
Yeah, they could just take the easy way out like they're doing and just say, okay, you're paying $200 a year as a road tax for your electric car. I mean, I think the states are going to be lazy, and that's really what's going to get shoved down our throats. Personally, I don't think it's the right approach, but I think that's what we're going to be getting.
Well, that's what West Virginia's got. We have a $200 additional fee for pure EVs and a $100 additional fee for hybrids.
Yeah, I really see that the way it's going to go, even though I don't think it's the most fair way. Some states it's even more. I think there's a state that charges like $500 a year, or some crazy amount. That's like you'd have to drive like 80,000 miles a year with a gas car to pay the same amount of tax. So, you know, I don't think that that's going to be really resolved in the best manner anytime soon, unfortunately.
But I've also seen, I think I'm off mute.
Yeah, I had a question about pushback from states, like say like Delaware, where there's a ton of traffic driving through and buying gas, and they, you know, some of these states are going to miss out huge amounts if it's based on mileage of, you know, who's living in their state or licensed in their state.
I see the reports that only 30% of the road funding is through the gas tax anyway. So why not just go the other way and drop it, make it a regular tax funded issue?
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
and the
you
other
could,
thing about
but
the
then-
registration fees is that it's only state registration fees for the state road tax. It wouldn't affect the federal portion of the gas tax. So you do kind of need some kind of almost nationalized somewhat system.
Great.
Yeah, so it might eventually end up leading to the elimination of the gas tax, but then you have some other tax paid in some other direction that funds roads.
Mm-hmm. Good points. I don't know, Scott. Maybe I don't really know. I don't think a lot got passed because everything stopped. But did any legislation go through related to electric vehicles in Maryland? Can you talk about?
Yeah, the one bill that they were rushing to get out the door and passed and was signed was renewing ZVIC, the Zero Emission Electric Vehicle Council. So there's that administrative matter that was kind of an easy lift, but yeah, the substantive things about, we had an EV pre-wiring bill and a right to charge bill, and those, you know, died. So just one minor bill went through, so it just renews ZVIC. I mean, and then the incentive bill. So that was in it. But yeah, New Jersey was like knocking it out of the park with EVs, and now they're, you know, you guys are because you know, I know Charge EVC was involved with that, and actually I've heard Pam Frank interviewed on a podcast before, and so they've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes, and now it's really paying off.
Yep. Yeah, we have the most aggressive point of sale rebate in the country right now, up to $5,000 cash on the hood. You get a $25 for every mile of range the car does in EV mode. So it works for plug-in hybrids too, but the plug-in hybrids phase out after 2 years. There's no more incentives for them. But for pure electric cars, you get $25 for every mile. So as long as the car hits 200 miles of EPA rated range, it gets the full $5,000. It's capped at $5,000 per vehicle. So now you're looking at, for the cars that at least get the full $7,500 federal tax credit, plus that, looking at $12,500 off a car, and that really levels the playing field. So even Teslas will qualify for this, but there is a $55,000 cap. So the MSR, your total cost of the car, got to be under 55 grand. So, you know, if you stack up a Tesla with some options, it's easy to push it over 55, but it's also, you can definitely do it. You can get a Y or a 3 and qualify for the $5 grand cash on the hood. And that comes off the sale price. You don't have to apply for it later. It's right off your sale price.
Great.
I unfortunately missed out on it. I bought my Model 3 8 months before this got passed. Would have been nice to have an extra $5 grand cash on the hood, but I guess I needed to pull the trigger when I did.
Great. Okay. Well, any other questions? I think we've gone for about an hour and a half, which is pretty good. Great topics to talk about. I'm not sure I'll be doing one of these next month yet, but I can always, I'll probably, if I do, we'll post it a couple weeks early. But Tom is a great speaker. You filled a lot of time, a lot of interesting information, and I really appreciate you coming on with us today. And I'm going to give you a final question. Now, what's next on your plate as far as reviewing cars? Can you tell us about anything, or is?
So I think I mentioned earlier that I got a 2020 Leaf Plus.
Okay, right.
Just 2 days ago. It's actually finishing up charging in my garage right now. And as soon as this is over, I'm heading out to the New Jersey Turnpike, and I'm going to drive in a loop until it won't go any further. So I'm going to be doing a rage test on the 2020 Leaf Plus. You can look for that video on Inside EVs within 2 or 3 days.
So
anyone want to guess? Anyone want to get a pool going on how far I go? Everybody make a guess.
Yeah. Well, I don't even know what the range of that car is. Is it over 200?
Yeah, I think it's 215, the Leaf Plus, 215, 213, somewhere around
something
there.
like that. Mm-hmm. How do you get the car back if you run it to zero? Do you have like a tow truck in the waiting?
So what I do is I'll run it until it goes into kind of reduced power mode. And I usually have a couple miles. When I start to get near the very end, like, you know, when I'm down to the last 5 miles, I'll really scan for DC fast chargers in the area. I'll kind of know where I'm going to end up because I plan it ahead of time. And I make it so that I'm going to be close to a DC, like within 10 miles. So then when I'm down to like 5 miles, I'll pull off the highway and kind of circle at about 30, 40 miles an hour. So the whole time it's at 70, but the last couple miles, it's a little bit less. And I like to, once the vehicle hits zero, state of charge, then I'll go to the charging station. So, you know, I don't always drive it until it won't go any further, but it's within a mile or so. We actually did it with the Mini Cooper SE. As I was backing into the Electrify America charging station, it died 4 feet short of the connector. So I had to push it the last 4 feet just so the connector would plug in.
Well, if you keep it at 70 and with today's weather, I would give it like 245.
Really? I'll be happy to get that. I was thinking it wasn't going to do too much more than the EPA rated range because it's all highway speed. But you know, I don't have much experience with a Leaf. I drove the first generation Leaf quite a bit. But this second generation one, I've only done a couple short trips with it. So that'll be great. 245. All right, we have one guess. Anyone else?
I was going to do 225.
All right.
230.
220.
220.
All right. You're close grouping here. Well, check it out.
Okay.
I'll have the post up probably by midweek because I got to put the video together, and we'll see who won.
Now, does the 20 have the liquid cooling? Have they brought that out yet?
No, they still haven't. Nissan,
That's in the 21 then.
I don't know where their head is that they won't properly cool these battery packs. I wouldn't buy a Leaf.
I would not either. If I had one,
Maybe
I wouldn't buy another one.
I'll amend my number to 240.
I'd probably lease one if it was the right vehicle for me, because not caring about the battery, but I wouldn't buy one. Anyway.
Okay.
So,
wait, speaking of batteries, what's Tesla going to announce on Battery Day?
Oh yeah.
Your guess is as good as mine. Like I said, when there's these big events for any manufacturer, we get advanced knowledge of it. It's all under embargo. You know, we can't say anything. Tesla gives you nothing. I wasn't even invited to the Battery Day, so I won't be there. You know, like I said, Tesla is really selective on who they invite to their events. If you write anything that's critical of Tesla, you are blacklisted. It's really unfortunate because I love the company, I love their cars, but they're kind of trumping it in a way where if you ask them bad questions, you're fake news. And Tesla has a lot in that with them. If you're right, anything that's critical, forget it. They stop you from replying to your emails. No car manufacturer does that. I could kill the Nissan Leaf. I could say it's the biggest piece of shit you've ever seen and tell people don't buy it. But the next week, if I email Nissan with some questions, within an hour, they'll come back and give me all my answers. You know, I mean, they might not be happy. They might say, you know what, you're really hammering us hard over there, but they'll answer me. If you're a journalist and you even suggest that Tesla doesn't do something right, that's it. You're cut off. And I've already been cut off. And I own a Model 3 and I love it. But that's the way they go. It's a very difficult company to work with.
Tom, I got a question about automotive journalism. And is there, I get the sense there's starting to be a kind of cadre of EV journalists that are getting a lot of experience and can form and make an informed judgment about a car. Because I noticed in the early days, and not you, but there were people that were kind of conventional auto journalists, and then they would be handed an electric car and they would say, okay, well, take it out and tell us what you think. And then on the fly, they would have to be learning how to charge and how to, you know, pull up something on charge point and kind of learning. And then that would make it into the review, and it made it sound like, oh, you know, this is going to be a hassle. And my point always was, you should be driving the car for 3 or 4 months and then tell me what you think of it, because then you learn how a real person would learn how to use an electric car.
Yeah.
So is the quality of EV automotive journalism getting better?
Absolutely, 100%. In the early days, the funny thing is, I used to get pinged by some of the major automotive journalists. They used to reach out to me and say, hey, I've got this Nissan Leaf. What should I be writing about? Without naming a couple publications, some of the major publications used to send me their articles and to proofread, to say, did I make a mistake here with kilowatt hours and kilowatts and regenerative braking? So like, I almost early on was like tutoring some of the outlets, let's say like Edmunds, when they were doing reviews, they would send the stuff to me and say, we don't want to sound like fools here because we don't really understand these cars. But that's not happening anymore. They're getting more sophisticated. They're learning the cars because they're driving so many of them that, yeah, the level of the reviews is definitely going up. But still, every now and then, I still cringe a little bit. And God, last night I was reading a review from someone. I don't know if it was at Forbes or something. And I even forget what car it was. But I was reading it and I'm like, oh, I was like face palming, like really, they were like totally wrong about regenerative braking or something, like they just, it was just totally wrong, and, I'm like, really, we're still at that. But yeah, the good journalists got it and they're doing a really good job with it now, but there's still a lot of the ones that really very rarely report on EVs that are just, they're lost. They're focusing on things that they focus on with their gas cars, and an electric vehicle review should be, at least 50% different than the review of a gas car.
Well, I used to read the mainstream automotive press and stopped reading it when I got interested in EVs because it wasn't just the tech they were getting wrong. It seemed like they couldn't get out of their own lifestyle. I got the impression a lot of these guys were single 20-somethings living in apartments, and they would say, this car will never work. And it's like they never considered what it was like to have 2 or 3 cars in a household, to own a house, to have a partner that you traded off who used which vehicle. For them, it was, I need one car that does everything because I only own one car.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely some of that, 100%.
Okay, I think I'm going to wrap it up right now.
One thing, if I could
more?
just share.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in the chat, the little gas prices since 1910.
Okay. Is it Google?
I just don't have a computer, so I can't pull it up on a computer.
So
Is
there's
that
one thing that I
inflation
wanted to
adjusted?
add. I apologize. I didn't really realize we had that chat going. I didn't have the window open. And now I just pulled it up and looked at some of them, and there's definitely some good questions there. But one that I wanted to point out was that David Lawrence wrote a question. Now I skipped down to where is it? It was about charging networks. Yeah, other than Tesla seem to be charging inordinate amounts for their services, especially Ionity in Europe. And one of the things, I'll defend the networks a little bit here. So Teslas are great. They basically charge you what the electricity costs in the area, which is phenomenal. But understand, Tesla bakes the price of their network into the car. You've already paid $1,000 or $2,000. It's built into the car to use the network. If you remember early on, Tesla, the smaller battery EVs, they charged you $3,000, I think it was, for supercharger network. So they put a value of that onto the sale of each car. So yeah, if you front loaded $2,000 or $3,000 to them, they can sell you the energy at what it costs them. These other networks, Electrify America, ChargePoint, EVgo, they haven't gotten any money from you. And these networks, it costs an incredible amount of money to install a charging station. Let's say an Electrify America site that has, or Ionity, that has 6 to 8 stations, which is like the average site, that costs more than $500,000 to install that site, for the equipment, for the permitting, the labor to trench and put all the electrical lines in. And now they have to maintain it. When a screen breaks, when a charger breaks, they have to send somebody out. It's $1,000 just to send somebody out to a station and open it up and fix it or whatever. So we've got to cut these networks a little slack as far as how much it costs. It's going to cost a lot more to DC fast charge on the road. That's not, if you buy an electric car with the hopes of that's what you're going to do, you're just going to always DC fast charge, expect on paying about what it costs you to refill a gas car. You're not going to save money on your fueling because even at the high prices that, say, Electrify America or Ionity charges now, they're losing money. They're not making money because don't forget that one site has to recoup $500,000 in profit before they're even above water. It will take years, if not decades, to do that. So you're paying for a service. You're paying for the convenience of charging your car quickly on the road, and you're going to pay for that, and it's going to be expensive. I mean, I have a 24 kilowatt DC fast charger on a property I have in Montclair, and I charge $6 an hour to use it, which isn't cheap, because you're only getting 24 kilowatts for the hour, probably 22 kilowatt hours, because you never get the exact amount. And you're paying $6 for that, which costs a lot more than what you pay at home. That station costs me $600 a month to run. I lose $600 a month in demand charges, electric demand charges, besides the fact that it costs like $15,000 to buy it and install it. It's just, I have it there as a service for the area, for people in my area can use it. So before you jump on some of the networks about how come it costs, God, it cost me $20 to recharge my electric car. It's ridiculous. It cost me $6 to do it at home. Understand, they're probably losing money charging your car with the demand charges, with the overall service of using it and everything. So my opinion is we have to support these networks now. We have to put our money where our mouth is if we're advocating for electric vehicle adoption, because the only way those prices are going to drop is if everyone's using them. If the stations are used all the time, it'll lower the operating costs of the networks. Then there'll be a competition. ChargePoint and Electrify America, EVgo, they'll want you to use their network. So they'll drop the price a little bit, then they'll drop the price a little bit, and the price will settle in at a level that's right above what it takes them to manage the station and be able to install new stations and have a fair profit margin. But right now, it's going to be expensive, And in my opinion, is we have to bite the bullet as EV advocates and pay for it. Show the networks that we're supporting their network. We want them to install more. And once there's millions of electric cars on the road, this is all going to get consolidated. Pricing is going to drop. And I think we'll be in a much better place there. But for now, it's going to be expensive. It's a service. And in my opinion, I think we should pay it.
Great. Okay.
Thanks.
Yep. Thank you very much. On that note, I'm going to stop the meeting. Just follow the meetup group. I'll send out notices about the next one, but I appreciate Tom. Thanks for spending your Saturday morning with us. And
Again, this is what happens when we drag it out.
everybody, yep. Very good. Very good. Everybody, have a great weekend, everybody.
Great, man.
It was
Okay.
nice talking to you all. Thanks for inviting me.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.